Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to a very special program for Project Kin. Today, we are hosting another two-person panel as part two of our two-part series on self-publishing your family history stories. This time, we've brought our Karen Ray, who was with us last week, talking about the what and why about publishing a book together with Carrie Carney. And today, her partner in this conversation will be Cindy Terrien. And we're going to be diving into the practical challenges of actually getting your book published. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen to get us started on today's conversation. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you, Barbara. As always, it's just fun to be on this kind of a call and a workshop, and Cindy and I have been looking forward to this. So I want to ask you a question as we begin. Is worrying about how or when to publish your story keeping you stuck? If it is, Cindy and I are hoping to give you an overview of some things that may help you to get you unstuck and other things that you can think about as you get going. So just as we start off, I want to just touch base a little bit about some of the things that we discussed in part one. And while we're not going to repeat that, I want to bring you up to speed about it, just like outtakes from a TV show when you're catching up on that. So last time we discussed how to choose presentations that fit your audience. And it's just one of the many things to think about when you're considering the publishing part of your journey. Should it be physical, hard copy book? Should it be a digital product? How do you want to present that? We also talked about niche topics and that the fact that small projects are fantastic as well and should be a part of even building a bigger project if you want to. So we may circle back around and discuss some of those options, maybe in Q&A or depending on how we're doing time-wise. But I want to mention one more thing before we jump into really the meat of today. So another thing to consider is the tone. As you're writing your project, as you're thinking about publishing, it's important to fit that to your audience. And the reason we talk about that on the front end is because it will save you a lot of time once you get further down the road with your publishing. I think best practice for family histories is to primarily try to keep a warm conversational tone. You want it to be readable by a broad array of ages. So think of the voice that you want. Does that make sense? The voice that your narrator is going to have in the story. Considering all of those things does not get your writing done, however. So while you want to think about those and have them simmer away in the back of your mind a little bit, make sure that you get that writing done. So for the sake of today's conversation, we thought that we would pretty much assume that your manuscripts are ready to go. That said, we're going to walk you through several other steps that may not have occurred to you, or you might be in the depths of those, and we'll address those as well before we get into some nuts and bolts with that. So Cindy, you had some really wonderful ideas with types of writing to get your words onto paper and how to decide when it's time to publish. So I'm going to toss that over to you right now to handle those things, and I may jump in when you're done.
All right. So types of writing, if you've already written it, you may have already tried one of these things, but there's the story format. And then we have the historical and fact or fiction, instructional, and I really like what Karen had to say about the warm and familiar. You want somebody that's reading it to say, oh, that sounds just like her. My mother used to write like that. Anytime she wrote a letter, I knew it was her. The other thing about some ideas on how to write something. And Karen, tell me if I'm off on this, but I'm thinking about, sometimes it's hard to think, what do I want to write? So you can think about telling a story from a child's perspective, or telling the story as if two other women are talking to each other, or if grandfather is talking to a grandchild, the neighbor is making an observation about your family. These are, or you're writing a letter to someone. These are different ways that you can get that writing into a story format. And Karen, was that what you were looking for?
Yeah, exactly, Cindy. Let me just emphasize one of the things that you said. A lot of the work that I do is oral history based, so it's directly coming from interviews, and then we're adding in supplemental material to enhance that. But it is a brilliant piece of advice that Cindy mentioned just now, is it, even if you decide that the approach of writing a letter to someone is maybe not how you want to finalize your document, if you will address your writing to a particular person from the get-go, you will automatically become more conversational in your tone, become more approachable and friendly. And if any of you tend to be a little academic in your writing, or struggle with it not coming across natural, that will help avoid that. So wanted to just emphasize that. Cindy.
Okay. Any questions on that from the audience? I don't think I have much more on that. Karen, where do you want to go next?
Okay. Well, Cindy, what would you coach people on when it's time to decide to publish? What are some benchmarks that you might have for that?
All right, so benchmarks for when it's time to publish. You've been working on it for quite a while, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, and somebody's knocking at your door saying, when are we going to have it? When are you going to start? When are we going to see what you've been talking about? Because more than likely you've been telling somebody. At that point, you may have to say, you know what, I have to stop. I can't put in 16 generations of information. I can only put in 3 generations of information. So you have to kind of give yourself some benchmarks. Another time is when you are beginning to lose interest in the product. If you find that you're not working on it as often as you had previously, then it's time to say, it's time to get this published. What else am I looking for the wrong thing here? Sorry, I took my notes and then now I've lost it. Learning the product. Oh, no, that's the other one. Sorry. Yeah. If you've done all your research and you have nothing else to research, now it's time. So you've done everything you've wanted to do. It's time to move on. Karen, do you have any other topic or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just drill down on a couple of those, but I forgot to tell you all at the beginning, please, if you have questions, we don't want to miss those. And so we're going to have this wonderful Q&A session afterwards as well. We may also address some things as we go, but if you'll put a Q or a question and drop it in the chat box, we will be sure to circle back around and get that. But we're pretty casual with things too. So I wanted to give a couple cautionary tales. So Cindy talked about researching all your possible resources as one of your benchmarks for being ready to go. That can also be an endless rabbit trail. And so many of the folks that we've talked with, they've gotten stuck at that point. They either get stuck at the beginning, I've got so much stuff, I don't know what to do with it, or they get stuck on the research trail, and it can take years and years. So we're going to talk about a little bit later, I'm going to mention some milestones and project management flow, that type of thing, to help you avoid being stuck in that swamp of, oh, but there's one more thing. And oh, if I go check over here, it's all good. But at some point, even like the art masters of the world, you have to say it's done and trot it out in front of your audience to consume. The other thing that you may mention, I think Sindi hinted at this, is people are asking to see what you've produced. So you don't let them pressure you before you're ready. You want to be comfortable with where this is at. This is your baby. Your name is attached to this. So it's kind of snarky, but you know, you could say, well, I like the way I'm doing it better than the way you're not doing it. And you could use a little bit of humor with that if you wanted to, but I don't recommend that. I'm kidding with you. This is just assure them that it's in progress. You know, invite them to be a part of that if you want to. The other thing that you may want to consider with Are You Ready types of projects and collaborations that we may elaborate on later are if you bring this manuscript out before publication and you ask family members for input and other things that they want to contribute or perhaps editing, be prepared that you're going to need to be what I call a benevolent dictator and herd the cats and make sure that people follow deadlines. Or we talked about this in the last session too. If they miss that deadline, invite them to send you what they have, and perhaps it will go in a second edition. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, let me jump into, I think we're ready kind of for the meat of today's talk with that little overview. I've found that if you get some specific help in various areas, whether it is editing or formatting, maybe with your research, if you're having people contribute with you, the average gestational time for a family history is about 9 months to a year. And so I don't think you can do it in less than that unless you're doing a very short project and you're maybe starting with like a cookbook template or a children's book. Even that, the preparation time and the back office type of things that you need to be aware of take more time than you can imagine. And until you've done a project like that, you don't really see all those bits and pieces that are moving. Once you've done one, you will know. But just a cautionary tale, give yourself plenty of time. And like we mentioned in the last talk, don't start now to have it ready for Christmas this year. You need to give yourself some more time for that, and you'll be a lot happier with that. Sindi, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I want to agree with you because I've done a lot of projects, recipe books, biographies, tribute to parents, wedding, genealogy, family events. I've done 10 projects at least, and I'm always knocking at the door whenever it's time to, present the project for that particular event. So definitely you have to give it some time. Karen, you also said if other people are involved, especially family members, you're asking them to contribute. It's going to be hard to get them to follow your timeline. Some people are last minute, some people are first. So you can always count on who in your family, them, who's going to answer you tomorrow and who's going to be knocking at the door at the last minute saying, can you fit me in? So you may have to negotiate and provide some false deadlines to get what you need. But definitely, it always takes a little bit more time than you think it's going to take.
Right. Well said. And you remember this project you're doing it because you want it to be a blessing to your family. So keeping all of those relationships in mind. Let's see. When you're readying that manuscript for publication, you're going to have first taken a bird's eye view, this crow flying over the cornfield, of your manuscript, and you've got the structure of it, and then later on, as you're getting ready to finalize your semi-final draft before you add pictures, get down to that ladybug level, and that's where you're doing the line editing and eventually the proofreading. So you will have gone through your project more times than you can imagine by the time it's ready for publication. Edit, edit some more, get it in front of other people's eyes, but don't start too early with the proofreading bits, because you're going to have a lot of pieces that change before you get to that point. So when your text is just about ready, you are going to be preparing supplementary art, photos, documents that you want to insert in there. You may have put some text boxes in for placeholders and been curating all of these things, images that you want to put into your story. What do you do if, like me, you have a 3-foot manual corn planter from your great grandpa in Willamette, Oregon? I can't put that in a book, so what do? I take photo of it. And then, like any other object, whether it's your grandma's rolling pin or something else, take that photo, get all of your photos into what we call a high resolution format. So most print publishers require those to be at a minimum 300, what they call DPI, dots per inch. If you just keep that number 300 in mind, you can obviously put higher resolution photos in place, but that will be a good benchmark for your images that you want to include. There are services that can help you with the digitizing. Everything has to get into the computer. So if you've written it on a tablet, if you've got albums of photos or maybe some digital, get it all in digital format. And that is the way the world works now, to get it put into a book. So get help. That's one spot where you can get help if you need it, to have someone digitize. But make sure that you've curated down, for the sake of your budget. Don't give them the entire box, but choose what you want for your story. Maybe have a few extras, some options in there, but then you're only paying for however many images that you need in there, and in the interest of your time as well. Let's see. Publishing options. We talked some about that also in the last talk. Self-publishing is really our focus, but there are some different ways to do that as well. Sindi, you want to mention a few of the other options there?
Yep. So for self-publishing, I've done it all. I've printed it out myself off of my own computer, and stapled it or put it in a binder or whatever and distributed it to family members. I used staples for quite a while until I found out that I could get a better product and a cheaper product from lulu.com. I've also used Amazon. The nice thing about Amazon and Lulu, if you publish with them, they will then, people in your family can order them from the organizations and print it off for you and mail it for you, instead of doing it yourself. So I will tell you, I did a recipe book one time, and I used staples. I paid $80 per book, and then I shipped them all to my family, and it cost me, I think, another $11 to send it. And then 2 years later, someone in the family got married. I wanted to give them the book, and I reprinted it through Lulu, and it cost $14, and they shipped it. So it was a big difference in price. So you have lulu.com, Amazon. There are other publishers that can help you from start to finish that also do the printing. Pricing is quite different. I've never used any of that. Let's see, am I skipping anything, Karen, on types of publishing?
Yeah, there's lots of different companies. As Sindi mentioned, it might depend on the project that you have. Some handle some formats better than others. For Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, or what we call KDP, is their publication arm for that. Ingram Spark is another one that I have used as well. 48-hour books. That the type of publisher can be good if you don't want this out in the public. If you publish on Amazon, it is going to be public. There are some strange little workaround so you can get author copies and then remove it from public view. But there's probably other better options, like Cindy mentioned, and if you just want that as a family project. Let's see. There are I think I may be getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about setting up your project a little bit and collaboration control. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So where are you going to work on your project? So, I mean, probably if you're at the manuscript stage, you've been sitting in front of your computer, it's either on your lap or at a desk, whatever. But now it's actually time to do some of that real work where you're scanning in photos or whatever. You need to find a place that you're comfortable and a place that inspires you, keeps you motivated, but also may not be in the mainstream of your house, because if you're at the kitchen table, like I was for quite a while, you live around all of that for 3 to 6 months, if not more. So if you do have to use your dining room table or kitchen table because that's how your house is set, your home is set up, then give yourself grace and forgiveness for having a messy area. Just say, this is the way it's going to be for a while, and we're going to move on. And then, when you pack that final copy off to the editor or the printer and get it all done, you can throw yourself a little party and clean up that area of your house that is no more taking up your valuable space.
Yeah, Cindy, let me add something real quick right there to that one. This project you will be so invested in that Cindy and I both recommend that you create a space that's appealing and attractive that you want to go into and work. So if you can find some little corner or space, and even if it's something temporary that you put there, and this is your curating your space to make it enjoyable, and now it's time to work. Sometimes, well, I have a mug here. Look at this. Coffee is my spirit animal. That's kind of true, but that's hey, I am going to go to work, and I know my brain gets into gear, all of that. And so make that a part of your workspace. Is you're taking yourself seriously, you're respecting your efforts with this, and if you have to, throw a sheet over it or something in between times so that the rest of the family can function too. But yes, let me hand it back to you, Cindy, for the collaboration control bit.
Okay, so collaboration, again, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I just did a very quick family story for a children's book regarding my grandmother and her making a cake. So I said, great, I'm going to print this up and I'm going to share it with the family, but I want it to be illustrated. And I have a member in my family that does illustrating. So I called her up and said, hey, would you like to do this project with me? And she said, yes, I would, because previously I'd asked her to do something and she said no. So I was like, great, this is a great opportunity for me to bond with my niece that, lives in a different state and so forth. And then after we talked about what we were going to do, she finds out she's pregnant with her second child. And now she's not as energetic as she used to be. And now my little book that I thought would be published in the end of May, it may not be ready for another year. But I don't want to take that away from her either, but you may have to, depending on what it is that you're working on, you may have to talk to somebody else and have them be the collaboration. You may have to release someone from their duties so that you can get this moving along if you have a specific deadline that you're trying to meet. So that's what happens whenever you do collaboration. Another thing that you may have to do is get permission for photos to be printed in your book. So, just because you have the photo, you received it from whomever, that does not necessarily mean that you have the rights to that photo. So you may have to ask someone else to get permission to that photo, to use that photo, even if so it could be a friend. Like I went on a trip with a friend and I liked some of his photos and I wanted to include it in my book. So I asked him and he gave me the permission. But if you're doing something that's offline, something that's from the internet, you found a map or a photo, you may have to get permission, or you may even have to pay royalty fees to use that picture, photo, or whatever. So think about that whenever it's time to collaborate. Anything else, Karen?
Search public domain sources. That can be a big help for you as well, and give you a lot of freedom to source something if you can't shake it loose from somewhere else, particularly for historical research that you're adding in to support your story. Anything else you want to add, Cindy, before I jump into milestones and project flow?
Well, it's even quotes may have to get permission depending on how much of a quote you use. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, good point. So when you are preparing to publish your book, that is an excellent time to start creating a sort of a target board or a milestone list, project flow for your work. You've probably been a little, we say it down here, loosey-goosey with your writing. That may have taken a while. It may have been in fits and spurts. Now you've got to follow a time flow if you want to get this thing out where other people can enjoy it. So as you're setting up goals and targets, consider that you want both little chunks, the easy wins, the short goals, and you want the big goals as well. So have a variety of those. I've found that a planning board can help with sticky notes that you can move down as you accomplish something. I've even been known to write something on that board after the fact and move it just for the little serotonin hit. So do whatever it takes to move yourself along with that. I like to give book clients that I'm working with a memoir timeline or a family history timeline, depending what they're working on. And of course, there's many details within the overview layers of that, but I can give you sort of a bulleted about 8-point starter that you might consider for your own timeline and milestone. So do you want me to give you that? Is that a good thing?
Yes, please.
Okay, we will do it. Now, let me say, as I jump into that, and I'll go through it pretty quick, celebrate the milestones, the small ones, the big ones. They're going to help you keep up the momentum for this marvelous project that you're working on and help keep you from getting bogged down. So milestones for your project flow. Again, this is bringing in dollars versus time cost. So if areas where you decide, I want to get some help with this, you'll be able to go a little bit faster, or it may let you work on a different aspect of the project that only you can do. So you're going to weigh that as you get going. For example's sake, because this is primarily what I work with, is oral history interviews. If you're starting with those, you're going to do a series of them, probably an hour to 2 hours over a series of weeks. And however long it takes you to do that, depending on your subject. I usually try to keep it pretty condensed so that people are in story mode, they can get that done. And then there's the transcription, which is part of that process. You have to transcribe all of those. That's something that you can outsource, or you can do it yourself. It is very time consuming, but you want to get those readable. And after that, then you're going to jump into the second part, which would be your book structure development and organization. You're going to take those interviews, or let's say that you already have you're not doing interviews and you have a written story that you've already worked on. If that's a longer work, not a short one, you're going to start divvying that up into your initial working chapters. It doesn't matter if it's the final chapter title. Give it something that you can work with and know what you're referring to as you go. Even if you're writing a children's book, you'll have to pay attention to your structure development and organizing the flow with your illustrations and your story. So that's your second point. Give yourself several weeks to complete that, and you may get a little bit of feedback from someone that you trust that may be familiar with your story, or someone who's not, and a friend that can weigh in and say, this makes sense or this does not, as you're doing that initial organization. A third one is to finalize and edit, digitize the photographs or the artwork that you need to put in that book. Pin those down, start putting captions with them, keep them in a digital folder on your computer. Begin thinking about cover ideas at this time too, because that's all image-based as well. I really recommend that if you are going to be putting this out for public consumption, even if you're not, even if it's private, we want to do the very best job that we can with this. So go through a wander in the memoir and family history section at your local bookstore and notice some covers that appeal to you, or some children's book covers that you like, and take some pictures of them with your phone. Say, oh, I like this, I like that font, I like this color scheme, I really enjoy how they incorporated these vintage photos in there. And you will learn through doing that what you like, what appeals to you. If you can't make it to a bookstore, you can do the same thing on Amazon. So try that. Number 4 would be to, when you have that final document ready to review, before you go to formatting, review it again. If you can get some other eyes on this to do copy editing, there's 3 or 4 levels, depending who you talk to, of the types of editing that you need to do on a manuscript. We've mentioned the structural development. That's only one of them. When you start getting down into the weeds, there's line editing, there's finally proofreading. So those are the line editing, the proofreading, those are some good places if you want to get some help and shorten your time invested on this project, that you can work with a professional. So right in the middle of this, I've gotten through point 4, but I want to throw this over to Sindi, because she had some good things to say about how you might choose, let me find this here, how you might choose editorial help. I think it's under publishing options for you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So first of all, once you've decided on what you're going to do for publishing, especially if you're going to hire an organization or a publishing company where you're, actually shelling out a couple of $1,000s for it. At the end, if you've gone to maybe 2 or 3 different organizations, publishers, and you finally make your decision, and then 2 weeks later, one of the other companies calls you and says, what's your decision? And they say, oh, well, did you know about this? Did you know about this? There's always that Monday morning quarterbacking, that somebody else is going to make you feel a little strange about your decision. So step back and think about how you got to the decision that you made to begin with. You did your shopping around. You talked to these people. You found out who you were comfortable with. You found out what you really liked about, or what you need and want, and who had what to the services. So please don't. And I have to tell you, I worked with a woman who called me later. She had signed a contract with an organization, and then this exact thing happened to her, and she was just devastated. And I had to walk her back and make her realize, you are an adult. You made a very good business decision. You talked to other people about this. This wasn't just something you did. So that kind of helped her. So just, if someone makes you feel that you made the wrong decision, rethink that. If you do go with a vendor to help you publish, ask it to do like 10 pages first. Have them send them 10 pages and see what they do with those 10 pages. Are you happy with that? If you sign a contract, read the contract. Make sure you understand what it is that they are going to do for you. You might want to ask them exactly what editing means to them versus what you think editing is. I've had it in my head that editing is somebody looking at my grammar and my sentence structure and, kind of like tightening up my writing. A lot of publishers don't do that. That is not what they consider editing. So that was kind of a surprise for me. Have them give you samples of what they did before and after for editing. Tell them what your expectations are, that what you think they are going to do for you versus what they think they're going to do for you. And then if an editor has like packages and you don't want everything in that package, negotiate with them. That is not the only option. Although that's what we see and we think is the only option, it isn't necessarily. And I will tell you that I renegotiated. When I worked with Kindle Publishing, I had signed an agreement with them. And then I finally realized I didn't need 3 of their products. So I called them back and said, you know what, I'm just not comfortable. This is not me. I don't want this, because they wanted me to do interviews. And I'm like, no, this is not what I want. So we knocked that off. So I think that's what you were getting to. Is that right, Karen?
Yes, that's right. Thanks. And understanding that those publishers they do this for a business. They know all the ins and outs very thoroughly. And so some of the things that you may hear that are being offered may be something, if you haven't done this before, that you're just not familiar with and you haven't thought about that level. But what Sindi said about clarifying what you're getting for editing, if they say they're doing that, is very important. Most of the folks that I have worked with an all-in-one publishing type company somewhere, just like the ones that I work with, you as an author are expected to do the lion's share of that editing. There is no way out of that. You can get help with that, and I encourage you to do that. But there are things like Grammarly and AI and even your word processing program can help you really clean up your document, as well as the tried and true English teacher's trick of just reading it aloud to yourself. You will catch awkward stuff. You'll catch your pet word that keeps popping up way too frequently, and all of those things that just smooth out that document. So clarify the editing bit. There may be some companies that truly are, you can toss them your stuff and they will do everything for you, but it is typically a collaborative project that you're going to have a lot of sweat in the game as well for those. So, anything else, Sindi, before I bounce back to my timeline?
Well, I just, think about, you mentioned, and maybe you want to talk about this earlier. Let me just ask you, self-publishing, are we going to talk any more about that?
Yeah, I think that's our primary focus, is the self-publishing. So the memoir timeline that I'm going to give you, that I'm halfway through,
Okay.
I am dealing with it from that aspect, because that's what most of us, I think, do. So let me pop through the rest of those, and if we want to add anything, we can. So I stopped on number 4. You've got that final document that you're reviewing. Now, formatting is not the same as editing. Formatting is a different thing. You can, and we touched on this a little bit in the last talk, but formatting is another area that you can outsource some help if you want. You can purchase templates. There are some free ones out there as well that will let you drop your text in and give you the nice margins and what we call a gutter in the middle of the book. All of that, page numbering, the miserable experience of trying to not get page numbers to show up on your front matter, which is surprisingly tricky. And there's ways to get help with that. So that formatting and your cover design process, when everything's ready to go and you've got a good idea of what you want, it usually I think takes about 2 months of back and forth when I work with graphic designers. And when I give them a book project, it is already 90% of the way formatted. I have pictures pinned where I want them. I have captions. I let them do the nuts and bolts and the fine tuning and get those pagination things in the front matter correct, and get the table of contents automatically updated with the text. There are many sources for that formatting. You can do it if you're going through an all-in-one type publisher. You know, they will do that for you typically as part of your package. You can also, if you choose well and carefully, get some wonderful products produced by some very talented people on Fiverr. So I would just vet them that way. I have had very positive experience with both them and another company that since our last talk, I had used multiple times and found out that they're now out of business, formattedbooks.com. And they're segueing out into something else. But formatting for people that have the tools for it, if you're going to sink money into anything, do editing and formatting. You can also save time by playing around in wonderful Canva and getting at least a cover idea and concept developed. Again, if you want to take it to Fiverr or a cover designer, maybe you have someone that does this for a living within your family, you can have them put the niceties and the bells and whistles on that cover so it does not look like what we would call in the old school, before it became a thing, self-published book. You want this to be able to stand on its own next to any book in Barnes and Noble or professionally done through a publisher, some other place, and be proud of your book. So it doesn't cost a lot to get some help to just add those things that you don't even think about. Think of layers and shadowing, ways to make text stand out that are very important. And you can see the difference when they're side by side. Okay, so
I'm sorry, Karen, can I just interrupt you for a second? Because I learned something in my experience with one of my books that I had published recently. I used a photograph that I did, and then when I went to have it put on the cover of the book through the publishing system, I found out that things weren't in the right place. When the title came up, I mean, you know, the photo I wanted to use was in the right place, but whenever it was time to put the title, it just didn't fit right, or I had to use a different color font, or all these other things that I didn't realize that there's an art to book covers until I went to do it myself. So this is when it's nice to hire out somebody else that has a little bit more experience. And you said Fiverr. I have a friend that uses it. Mm-hmm. People from all over the world. And, you know, you're not, especially if you're using some of these organizations that are hiring out to India or Pakistan or something, you're not paying that much to get something turned around very quickly. So think about sourcing out some of those things. I'll stop.
No, that's great, Cindy. You're absolutely right. And somebody's probably, you may have asked it in the chat box, we're going to address, what does it cost to do that? Anywhere from, say you're going to get a cover through Fiverr, anywhere from $25, $30 for a beautiful cover to several $100s. So the range is there. Find someone whose artwork you like. You can see what they're doing. They kind of have the ability to create something that's kind of like what you have said that you found that you enjoyed in a look. And you can even give them that as an example. I like this look. Can you give me this look, but with these elements? And the amount of time that you will spend yanking on your hair and crying over trying to get it correct yourself, unless you do this all the time, is well spent on outsourcing something so that you can do the parts that give you joy. So, all right, you've got this thing. Let's say, for argument's sake, that you are going with Amazon KDP, and you have either purchased your own ISBN or you've taken their free one, which I think for most of our projects, getting their free one is just fine. There's a few ins and outs for if you thought your project was maybe something that would be good to enter in a contest or has a broader base of appeal, or you're trying to build a career out of your writing, I would recommend getting your own ISBN, as you are the total owner of that as well. But for argument's sake, you have uploaded it to KDP. We all get those ads on how easy it is to publish. You can publish in hours on KDP. Yes, but. So the process of uploading and all of that is simple. All this weeks and months of work that we've told you about on the front end, you can do this. You absolutely can do it. Don't get snowed by the details. Just ask for help where you need it. You're staring at the KDP upload page. They want to know, they want your book description. That's something you can write yourself. You can use some AI if you want to help you make that with some keywords and make that in a format that is going to be appealing to readers. Obviously, go back in and adjust it so it reflects your voice, but it can help you get unstuck, and it's just a tool to use. Choose keywords and categories. How KDP has done that has changed. There's a website called kindlepreneur.com, which is mostly for people that are using KDP to create an author type business, but it is full of just practical advice. The guy who runs it whose name escapes me at the moment, is brilliant and just never talks down and gives a lot of great information to you. So you've uploaded all of this. Take 72 hours. You upload your cover image. You upload your text. You're going to get back from KDP the option or the request, not a request, it's a demand. They say it nicely, but you have to proof that online digitally. And so, but that's not the end of the story. Make sure that you do that thoroughly. The way that we interact with screens, as you know from writing on the computer, our brain fills in things, especially on stories that we have worked for months on. I mean, we dream about these, and after a while, we just don't really see it. So do the digital review. Go back in if you find a mistake, correct it in your document, create another PDF, upload it. You can do that as many times as you want to get it right. Do not skip this next step I'm going to tell you. You're excited. You want your book out. Order a proof copy. Get a physical proof copy. You see all these nice little Post-it notes? I do this for a living. I edit for a living. I produce books for a living. This is what makes it through, not only me looking at it, but a highly skilled author looking at it with journal articles. There's oopsies that make it through grammar, spacing, and usually they're very minor at that point, but take a little more time, get the physical copy, go through and find your oopses, go back and fix them. It probably will not take you more than an hour or two. Re-upload a clean document. So do all of this before you send it out into the world with your name on it. You'll be so glad that you did. It's worth waiting for the proof copy. And if you have somebody else that's helping you out, maybe a friend or a family member that is really spot on with their sense of detail, give them a copy too and say, would you go through this and just mark this thing up? I'm just doing the last fine-tooth combing on this before I publish it. And so print proof copies was number 5. They usually get to you in 5 to 7 days. So that's enough time for your brain to rest after looking at that document and for you to see it with fresh eyes. Point number 7 in your timeline is to hit publish. Takes a couple days to go live. You're celebrating. You're going to have a book launch. You're going to have this, if it's print on demand, available for your family members to get their own copies. You're probably going to want to get a box of author copies that you can sign and give out as gifts. But that, in a nutshell, with a lot of details left out, is a good overview for here's where you could start with a project timeline and project management idea, and then fine tune that for yourself. Those publishers that Sandy and I mentioned also have book calculators that are free. Before you even get to the point of uploading your book, you can go in there and go, oh, if I had a 50-page book, or if I had a 200-page book, what would that cost me to get that printed by this company? Interior all black and white will always be less expensive than color books. Your cover can be color, but if you have even one color thing on the inside, they have to print it as a color book, and it can be very expensive. Depends how many copies that you want to have printed. Anything to add to that, Cindy?
Nope, I did do the reprinting it several times or reloading it several times with KDP. I can't think of anything else to add to that.
Okay, let's see. Let me just look through my list a little bit. Milestones, project flow, make it workable for you. This is just a basic outline for you to begin with. I think we've just about covered everything on what's really a high-level overview of this. There are more details within it, but you learn as you go. Once you get into it, there's help in all kinds of places, much of which is free. It will take you some time to absorb that and learn it, but you're going to be so proud of yourself when you got it done. Don't be daunted and think that, oh, I have to do a whole full-on, 200-page book, or it's not enough. This is your project. If you write an essay, if you write a children's book, the effort and TLC that go into that is priceless, and your family's going to love it. Photocopies from the local print shop are just as cherished as a hardbound book. So
Right.
You can find a project that fits your capabilities and what you have to give to it, both time and money.
So Karen, I just want to say one more thing with regard to Amazon, KDP or Lulu, is they also have templates for you, and you also at that point decide what size book do you want. Do you want a 5x7, an 8x6, a square book, a rectangular book, so that you have whenever you go to upload it, it uploads to the right size too. So
Yeah.
that's going to be something good. But I also want to thank everyone for allowing me and, well, I should say, Karen and I to share our lessons learned so that other people can not have to, well, you're going to find something else that we've helped you along, but you're going to find something else you're going to say, I wish I had known, or somebody else needs to know about this. So when you do, share it with us.
Yeah, in fact, we've got a few minutes before we break for Q&A. If somebody has something that you have learned in the trenches too, we are constantly learning, and the industry is changing rapidly. So if you have something, we would love to hear it. You might just really help someone along today.
I think, Karen, your 8.5 point list there is going to be something I'm going to come after you for a post, because I think it's always a challenge you get so dug into that first step and all of the things that it took to do that. You take a big, deep breath, and then you look at what's ahead and you lost track. This has been tremendously helpful. I want to thank you both. Absolutely. And maybe if I can kick off the questions while we are still on the recording, a quick question that was asked by Jane Hutchin before she had to jump off, related to really on the writing process, and any insight you have to one of probably the most common question that comes to any writer these days, which is the big AI question. Do you want to talk a little bit, one of you, a little bit about what your feelings are about that as a tool for writers?
Cindy, do you
I have no experience with it. So Karen, I'm going to let you take this one.
Okay, sure. AI has been around for ages. You just didn't call it that. it's in the news now, and even your little spelling and grammar check in your Word doc is AI. It is checking for that. So you're probably already using it. It is, I would say, consider it as a tool, and it is not to replace your writing. It may help you to really, I think it's best used for family history or memoir writers is to do that editing check for yourself. I have heard of folks using it a little more extensively to smooth out a problem paragraph or something. Don't be afraid to do that. If you have, here's a way that would work. Let's say you have been struggling with how to word this paragraph. You just can't get this awkward sentence untangled and you're stuck. You are not cheating to take that paragraph, plug it into ChatGPT, hit whatever, I forget what the button is, but let it do its stuff and then see what it comes up with. It may just be that aha moment. Oh, I need to split this horrible sentence into 2 sentences, or I need to reverse the order of some words. Take what it gives you, work it over so that it is yours, and then that can help you just move forward and get past that sticking point in your work. So it's a tool. Use it to improve your writing. I don't think you have to worry about trying to write your book using AI. That's not going to work for this type of story that you're doing. That little AI computer guy, he doesn't know your experiences. He doesn't know your voice, your take. So we're not worried about being worked out of a job because it takes human beings to translate the voice. Yeah. Use it as a tool to help you.
Yeah. I tend to think of it as an electronic assistant, electronic friend. I can turn and ask something of, and then I can also be rude and ignore them. They don't mind.
Yeah.
But speaking of the what's okay and what's not, in the world of genealogy and family history, there's a lot of shoulds. There's a lot of shouldn'ts, especially as it relates to things like citations, where we sort through facts and what's right and wrong. When we talk about things like you should always get permissions for everything, I'm on the recording saying this, but I'm asking, I think, a general question that a lot of people wonder. Where certainly if I am publishing to the big old world something as my name on it, I bloody well better have all the permissions for everything that's not mine in there. That makes lots of sense. But where do you start dividing the line? I don't ask permissions if I include a quote in an email. I may not even be sure who said it. But because of my nature, I'm particular even about what I email people. But
so I'll give you an
line?
Experience. Okay, I'll give you an experience, and maybe I went overboard, but I found a story that my mother's cousin wrote about an interview that she had with my great uncle. Now, my cousin had died, but her husband was still alive. And I wanted to post the interview. I wanted to share the story online where I have my blog. So I called her husband and asked for permission. She wrote this maybe 20, 30 years ago. I don't know, but I didn't feel like it was my story to publish without permission. So I went to him, and at first I didn't think he was going to say yes, but I did get permission from him. So that's one reason to get it, only because it's out of respect.
Yeah.
And you just don't know how other people in the family might feel about you publishing something that you didn't create that belonged to them. So yeah, that's one thing that I did.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and maybe that's a really good place to wrap this up as well, is unlike other kinds of how-to books that are just, a nonfiction how-to book about whatever. A story about family, you still have to live with them. You don't keeping us a respect and honoring a story, honoring the place it began, and honoring where it came from. You're going to be living with the results and the consequences of publishing this. And I think that really requires some careful thought. And all of you within Project Ken, I think this is one of the things that I'm most proud of, is the ways in which all of us of community have really been speaking to this. There's some wonderful things that your previous partner on this series, Carrie Carney, talked about in her project recipe about the 5-generation cookbook, how to keep everybody happy and how to navigate those sensibilities, both about contributions. And I gave you all this stuff, but it's not in the book. How come? All of those kinds of delicate feelings, because, feelings matter. It's like neighbors, you still live there. Anyway, I want to thank you both for this wonderful, wonderful contribution. I'm going to stop the recording, but all of you here are very welcome to stay for what we call our after party, as we can continue the Q&A portion a little more relaxed. We can all take our hats off, turn our screens back on, and enjoy the conversation. Meanwhile, just a quick reminder, all of these recordings will be shared within a couple of hours after this talk, and I'll be including as many of these links as possible, as relevant, and any more that we think of after the recording is over. So again, thank you all.